Welcome to Mentoring with the Masters. I'm Lauren Detzel from Orlando, and this segment is about estate planning. Estate planning is a very broad topic. For example, I teach the estate planning class in the graduate tax program at the University of Florida, and we have 28 class hours. So obviously we can't talk about substantive issues dealing with estate planning, but I wanted to talk about some practice tips of getting started doing an estate planning practice. And probably the most important thing that I can tell you today is that when you begin your practice, you need to make sure that you know what the ethical rules are dealing with representing families in estate planning. Most of the time you'll be presented with a husband and wife who will come in together to do estate planning, or you'll be doing estate planning for the two of them. And that of course raises questions about who do you represent? Do you represent the husband? Do you represent the wife? Do you represent them together? And you really can't do a good estate planning job in Florida without reading carefully Florida Ethics Opinion 95-4, which sets forth your responsibilities as an estate planning attorney dealing with multiple clients. This establishes the rules about how you make sure you satisfy your duty of confidentiality, your duty of loyalty to each of those clients at the same time. It is extremely important for you to have an engagement letter at the very beginning for any file, whether it's estate planning or anything else that you do. And in that engagement letter, you set forth the rules that will govern if a conflict arises between the husband and wife in your representation. And you should discuss this with them at the very beginning, because you want to either establish a joint representation where you're representing the husband and the wife together as a unit, or you're representing them separately. And you need to have memorialize this in your engagement letter and what will happen if a conflict arises. For example, the normal case is that you will represent the husband and wife together, and that everyone agrees that there are no confidences among the parties. So if the husband or wife tells you something, they know from the very beginning that that communication must be allowed to be given to the other spouse, so that you don't end up in a situation where confidence is imparted to you that you can't tell to the other spouse, that will put you in a huge conflict. Let me just give you a little example. Let's suppose you've done documents for husband and wife, and they leave everything to each other and then to the children, and then the husband calls you a month later and says, well, I really would like you to make a change because I've got this girlfriend that I want to provide for. That will present you with a huge problem if you have not discussed in advance the fact that that communication he has agreed to be given to the wife. And so you will avoid a conflict if that arises, because you've already said that either you have the right to tell that to the wife, which is obviously extremely important in satisfying your duty of loyalty to the spouse, and if he refuses, then you've already put in your letter that you have the right to withdraw, and you will not cause you to breach either of those duties that you have, any of those duties that you have to either of the clients. So make sure you've established the type of representation up front. The second thing is you need to make sure that you're working with good documents. Wills and trusts are very complicated, and you need to have excellent documents that you are using, certainly better than the client could do for themselves on LegalZoom. And if your firm doesn't have documents and doesn't keep those documents up, because the law changes constantly and you need to keep up with it, and you need to make sure your documents stay current. And if you don't have a system in your firm, then you need to purchase one. And there are some very good systems out there that you can buy that keep up with all the changes in the law and are very efficient. Probably the two most popular in Florida are Wealth Transfer Planning or Logic. And if your firm doesn't have very good forms and work very hard to keep them up, I would suggest you look at investing in one of those systems. As I said, estate planning is very complicated, and it's important that you start with the correct data. If you have wrong information, then you can't do a good plan. So if you don't have a form that your firm doesn't have a form to use to gather that information, then I suggest you look on again at one of these systems or on the web or bar publications that have estate planning questionnaires that you can use to get started with the client and gather the correct information. And estate planning is very much about the details. Frequently, it's important to an overall plan that you change beneficiary designations, that you change ownership, and you need to make sure that you have all of that in a comprehensive plan and that you have a checklist that will make sure that all of that gets done. You can imagine how disconcerting it might be for people to have paid you to do a great estate plan only to find out when someone dies that the beneficiary of the life insurance is payable to the spouse from a prior marriage. So you need to make sure that you have all of the parts of the plan covered and a mechanism to follow up to make sure it all gets done. Again, this is a very difficult area of law, and if you don't have someone at your firm that is going to help you review your work, mentor you, then I suggest that you join one of the sections of the bar that deals in this area, either the tax section or the real property, probate, and trust law section. Both sections have mentoring programs, and sign up to get a mentor who will help you in the substantive practice of law and answer these kinds of questions that I've tried to give you just a little bit about this morning. So again, welcome to the practice of estate planning. It's a very rewarding area. You get to know families and feel like many times you're doing a great service. Thank you very much.